Good evening. Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to the final week 4 of our 4-part series, Candid Conversations about clinical trials for our communities. Now, I am beyond excited for this particular session because you all get to meet one of the most loveliest patients I've had the opportunity to care for in our phase 1 clinic here at MGH. She has agreed to share her story about being on a clinical trial and her story from diagnoses to considering a clinical trial, getting on a clinical trial, everything that we talked about in the past 3 weeks. And she is not only on screen this evening by herself, she has brought her tribe with her sister and her lovely daughter, Carissa and Loretta. So I will encourage you to do two things: watch till the end, and then, if you have not watched part 1, 2, or 3 of this series, please feel free to head on over to our MGH Cancer Center YouTube page. All 3 of those videos are readily available. After you watch, share. Definitely share. Okay? So, without further ado, I am going to introduce my lovely patient, Pam, her sister Loretta, and Carissa to the screen. Um, I hope that you guys enjoy this evening. And please, if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. We will address them towards the end of this live stream. So, any questions, put them in the chat. I promise you, we're not ignoring you. We will just address them towards the end. Welcome, ladies.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Glad to be here.
Listen, I'm glad to have you on the other side of
Glad
life,
to
right?
hear.
We're glad you're here. That's right. So I'm gonna let Pam. I'll let you introduce yourself. Then we'll move on to Loretta, then Carissa, and then we'll get right into our wonderful conversation this evening. So feel free. Go ahead, Pam.
Okay. My name is Pamela Gordon. I live in Pawtucket, Rhode Island. I'm 66 years old. Oh, and I'm retired. I've been retired now for 5 years. I worked at Rhode Island Hospital as an account coordinator. And I have 2 adult children, a son and a daughter. And my daughter is a big part of my support group, along with my sister Loretta. And I'm thankful for them both.
Thank you, Pam. Loretta.
Hello, my name is Loretta Talbot, and I am Pam's sister, and I live in Rhode Island also. I am also retired from Rhode Island Hospital. Pam and I worked together for many years, and I was the administrative and training coordinator for food and nutrition. And I'm happy to be here to support Pam and to help whoever else may be going through a clinical trial or some type of situation where they may need some information.
Thank you so much, Loretta and Carissa.
Hello, I'm Carissa Gordon. Pam is my mother. I live in Maryland now for the past about 6.5 years, but I was born and raised in Rhode Island as well. I am a program analyst for the government, and also feel the same way. I'm happy to be here and here to support my mother and answer any questions or provide any personal information that I can.
Amazing. I mean, I get the privilege of seeing you guys often. I mean, the viewers are seeing you guys through a screen, but I can tell you guys one thing. If you haven't noticed, Pam and her sister are probably one of the most well-dressed people that come to clinic, and we joke about this all the time, but it's really not funny. But it's heels, it's hats, it's everything, and I just enjoy not only just seeing the fashion, but also enjoying your presence in clinic. But most exclusively tonight, Pam, Loretta, Carissa, thank you for agreeing to be here, and I am more than confident that the stories, the advice, everything that's going to be shared tonight will not only benefit those of us watching, but those who watch the video again, or even just by conversation, right? Of talking about what we've heard and what we've learned from you guys. So, Pam, just so we can get a big picture view of what your story is, can you just walk us through when you were diagnosed. Just give us your cancer journey in about 2 to 3 minutes.
Okay. Well, my cancer journey started in April of 2018 when I started having some mild symptoms. I was having a change in my stool and my urine and my eye color, where I had the yellow, the jaundice, and a little bit of itchiness. And I went to my primary care doctor, and he did some blood work. And one thing he did notice was that my bilirubin levels were elevated. So he sent me to go see a gastroenterologist. And I ended up having quite a few procedures and a couple of biopsies. And it took a while of going in and out of the emergency room and going through the different procedures before they finally concluded that I had cancer. So I ended up having major surgery in June of 2018, and they performed the Whipple surgery on me, which they took out my bile duct and part of my liver, and I forget whether something else. But I was in the hospital for a while. Recuperation was not too bad. I remember having stents put in me where they had to drain the bile, and there was a lot of things going on. But after the surgery, they also let me know that there was a 50-50 chance that this type of cancer that I had, which is bile duct cancer, would return. And almost 2 years later, fast forward to September of 2020, I had a lump on my side. I mentioned it to my primary doctor, where he did a chest x-ray, but they didn't really see anything, I guess because they needed to do a different test other than chest x-ray. I ended up going to my oncologist. I was routinely going to him for follow-ups where they were doing scans and, checking me out. And they found out after doing a biopsy that my cancer had returned. From there, I started doing chemo, and I had to be on 2 different types of chemo drugs this time. And it really did a job on me. I wasn't feeling good at all. I had a lot of symptoms, just was fatigued and tired and headaches and nausea. And I think it was the 3rd weekend of chemo when my oncologist mentioned the fact that there might be a clinical trial that I might benefit from. He actually knew the doctor that had a lot of patients on it, and he just wanted to let me know that that was something that I could do if I wanted to. I believe it was a couple of months later, and I really wasn't doing well. The drugs were wreaking havoc on my kidney, and he said that he would call Dr. Goyal, that's at Mass General, who's in charge of the clinical study there. And the following day, lucky for me, she called me back and said that she had a spot where I could come and be a patient in this clinical trial. I remember, I think it was a couple of days after that, we all did a Zoom call, my sisters and my daughter and myself, and we went over what that entails. I definitely said I was interested because, the prognosis they gave me when the cancer returned was not that good, and I figured I had nothing to lose. So I started, I went a few times to attempt to get into the trial, but I was having some issues because of the chemo and the effects that had on my body, that my numbers weren't right. So it took me 3 different tries before I was finally able to, be able to get on the study and start going from there and going through that whole process. So I'm very thankful that my oncologist mentioned the fact that there are clinical trials out there, because I had no idea that there were, and especially the one that I'm participating in targets the type of cancer that I have. So I am very grateful for that. And right now, since I've been on it for 4 months now, I believe, I've had a 40% shrinkage in my tumors. So I am definitely an advocate for clinical trials.
You know, Pam, so I know that there's more to the story too, right?
Yes.
But I just want to stop and just point out just two things, because you actually answered one of the questions that I was going to ask you. The fact that your doctor brought it up to you, seeing
Right.
how much of an effect chemo was having on you, and then also knowing, right, Dr. Goyle,
Mm-hmm.
um, knowing that there are other options outside of chemotherapy
Right.
for you. So prior to him offering, have you ever considered a clinical trial?
I mean, I've heard the words clinical trials, but I don't think I ever associated with a treatment for cancer. From working at Rhode Island Hospital, we used to see different bulletins and, advertisements where they're looking for people to participate, but it was never nothing that was as serious as cancer that I remember. So I am thankful that my oncologist did, let me know and encourage me to talk to somebody and try to get into it.
Definitely. And for Loretta and Clarissa, I want to hear from you guys, because you guys have been her support from the
Yeah,
beginning. Now
Right.
she's on chemo. Chemo is what you guys know, right? You
right.
know, if people have cancer, you get chemo. Tell me a little bit about when when Pam told you guys about this clinical trial. What were some thoughts that you guys had?
Well, the thing is, I was always with Pam. So when she found out about the clinical trial, I found out about the clinical trial. What I think people need to realize is that if your doctor doesn't mention a clinical trial, you should bring it up to him, especially if you have a serious disease and you're not doing well. That's something that I don't think people realize that they can do. So when the doctor said that she could go into a clinical trial, it was very, very exciting, because we knew that clinical trials help people live a better quality of life. It's also going to help the next patient to live a better quality of life. So to me, the clinical trials was just a godsend. So, and she was going through a terrible time with the chemo. The chemo was just wiping her out. It was not helping. It was just really taking a toll on her body. So when we heard that there could be a clinical trial, we were very excited. Very, very excited.
Yes, for sure.
Yes, exactly.
Awesome. I'll turn it
So,
to you, Carissa. Yeah.
okay. So for
Okay.
me, I mean, I would say I had mixed emotions. I was happy and relieved as well, but then I was also worried and concerned. Maybe it's just, my personality, my way of thinking. So I couldn't help but to kind of overanalyze the situation. So I was nervous if the chemo were to stop. What about the break in between? If there was a chance that the cancer could be more aggressive in that time of not having any medication. So again, I was happy and relieved, but I was also worried and concerned. I had also heard of the term clinical trial before, but I wasn't aware of what it entailed, as I never knew someone personally, like someone close to me, who participated in one. So therefore, I had a lot of questions, and I wanted to know what it would entail for my mother. I also had questions on the effectiveness of the medicine and what would happen when a trial ends, because I mean, we know the definition of what a trial is. So I was worried about the side effects, and like my mother and Loretta mentioned, being on chemo just really took a toll on her, and it wasn't a good quality of life for her. So I was just concerned with what would the side effects be on a medication. And then also, since the medication is not FDA approved, I just had concerns also about the safety, and how patients were cared for. Because, again, being skeptical, you kind of just wonder, is the person going to be used for experimental purposes, or are they really going to receive good quality care? So yeah, I would say those are some of my initial thoughts.
I feel
Oh, Loretta, we can't hear you.
You're on mute. Yeah.
There
okay.
we go.
Told us to mute when the other person was. I feel as though going into a clinical trial, I think you're under excellent care, because I think the patient is the focus, and that the doctors are focused on the patient, making sure their health is checked every which way that you could think of. And if something is not working, then they will explain it to you, they will stop it, or they'll tell you that, they're not going to go forward with the clinical trial. So to me, a clinical trial is the way to go if you're having a bad diagnosis and, something is not working. And so when they're really focused on the patient and the quality care of a clinical trial, I think it's just superb.
And it's interesting because so there's a mix of emotions here, right? So Pam gets offered, Carissa's skeptical. Carissa, you said something very profound. You've never really had anybody close to you ever on a clinical trial, right?
Mm-hmm.
Pam, you've seen these bulletins at work, but not necessarily understanding that this would be something that's available to you if someone was going through cancer treatment, right? And Loretta, you see it in a different light. Now, I actually have a question for you, Loretta.
Mhm.
Was your perception of clinical trials the same prior to Pam starting, or her getting on a clinical trial and seeing what has been happening and how things have been in the past 4 months? Has that shifted your perspective a little bit?
No, I had heard about clinical trials, and I always thought they were good. I always thought clinical trials was a good way to go if you're told that you may not have much time or medicine's not working. What do you have to lose to go to a clinical trial and get expert, care targeted to your illness? So I have heard about clinical trials. Like she said, working in the hospital, they would have tumor rounds and different, grand rounds, this, that, and the other. And so I did know about clinical trials, and I knew that they had clinical trials for just about everything. There's a clinical trial. So I did know about them. So I was happy.
And I'm gonna turf it now back to Carissa and Pam. Carissa, you were more on the skeptical side of like what is this? You threw out a few words: FDA approval, side effects, what happens when it stops working. So, and then experiment, right? So you're thinking you have a very different position than your aunt. Has where you began prior to your mom being enrolled on a clinical trial, what are your thoughts now versus then?
And I like to add, I don't want to seem like I was just totally negative. I mean, it was, I remember the day like it was yesterday, us all
Okay.
sitting around the dining room table. And,
Mhm.
it was a very emotional moment to know that she could it was like, just kind of lined up in God's plan. Like, okay, we can stop the chemo. There's a spot for you today. You can start, so it was a blessing. But because I'm a analytical person,
Right.
I may not have shared all that with my mother. Well, what about A, B, C, D, E? But in my head, it was going a mile a minute as to what about this, what about that, what about that. But fast forward to today, I mean, I'm definitely a lot less worrisome. I've learned a lot, and it's been a journey. Again, those few months, June, July, August, where my mother was trying to, I guess we could say, qualify, to begin the trial based on making sure all her numbers and her tests and everything were right. I mean, it was a lot. It was very
Very
difficult,
emotional.
very emotional, very, disappointing days. And but we continue to learn to see what adjustments we can make. Okay, drink more water. Don't do this. Don't, to get the numbers where they
Yes.
need it to be. And then for me, it's difficult because although I'm only in Maryland, it's not like I'm in Alaska But, you know,
way.
it's tough to come back and forth, but, you know, there's no place I'd rather be. I'm also grateful that that happened in 2021 and not 2020, where I might probably would not have been allowed to be there. But again, I am relieved, and she's received some excellent medical results, amazing results, and then also the care at MGH, I mean, has been great. So again, my skepticism about, okay, is she just going to be kind of like an experiment just because I didn't know any better, has definitely proved otherwise. Like, especially you, Brenda, and you know, the team, Autumn, like you guys always just, you care. So that helps. It helps.
Absolutely. And there's one rule to this entire session: no apologies. No apologies. No one saying sorry. I don't mean to be negative. I don't mean to be, this is candid conversation. This is why we're here, right?
Right.
Because a lot of people don't see this. And this is real. This is mom's experience. So, and Carissa, this is your perspective and this is your lived experience. This is exactly what we need to learn and understand. So, rule of thumb, no one says sorry. Cool. Now we talk about, you said July, August, September. I remember last July, August, September. There were a lot of visits, right, Pam? Lots of visits. I actually didn't meet Loretta until like later on, right?
Right.
So,
Yes.
so Carissa, you were coming from Maryland quite often to be with your mom at these visits. And for those of you who are viewing, July, August, September was Pam's screening phase. And we explained screening prior in the prior series where we run tests. Some folks have biopsies done, they have CAT scans to meet eligibility criteria for the clinical trial. And what was happening in Pam's situation is that her kidney function was a little bit too high and she wouldn't meet criteria. So we would have to bring her back in 2 weeks and bring her back in 2 weeks and bring her back in 2 weeks. And we probably did this 3 to 4 times. And then what also happened is that some of her assessments, like her scans, fell out of window. We had to repeat scans. So it was quite the journey to get onto the trial.
Mhm.
Lots of tears, right? I mean,
Yes.
listen, I was there. And I had tears too, because I can see the eagerness, right? And then the support, but there was also a sense of fear. And a lot of the questions were coming from, you, Carissa, you say you were analytical. I caught that first visit, 2 minutes in, you know, you had a list of questions on your laptop. I agree with you. That is what an advocate should be. But
Mhm.
there's a lot of fear. So, Pam, you lived this experience, Carissa supporting you, Loretta supporting you. Can you speak to those 3 months and just share some of your thoughts and experience for a 3 month screening phase? And just so everyone understands, screening does not take 3 months. This was very individualized to Pam's cancer journey.
Yes. I believe it took 3 months for me to get my numbers right because the chemo had done such a job on my body. I was very weak and exhausted and tired. And, like you said, there's criteria you have to meet. It's got to be done within a certain time frame. And I came back, I believe it was 3 different times before 3 different tries before I could actually qualify to start. So it was very, very stressful. And I have to give my daughter a lot of credit because she was coming up with all kind of solutions as to what we can do. Drinking fluids, changing my diet, putting more protein in my diet, drinking protein shakes. And then I can't remember who it was, but at MGH, somebody had mentioned, or I think it might have been my daughter, that said, well, why don't we try giving her fluids before they do the blood draw rather than afterwards? That way my body was hydrated. And then after the second failed attempt, I believe it was, they said, well, come back tomorrow and we'll do the fluids first and then draw the blood. And when that happened, that creatinine number was where it needed to be. But then I still had to wait another month, I believe,
3 weeks.
before, yeah, because everything's in a time frame, and I was out of that window, I believe. So I had to wait another month, and then again just work on gaining weight because I had lost like 25 pounds. So trying to get myself stronger and put on weight. And then lo and behold, the third try, everybody was holding their breath, and it was very emotional, and those numbers came back, and it was good. So I still get emotional now when I think about it.
It was a very trying time.
Yeah. It was very difficult. I mean, I would walk off in the hallway and just cry. And, she didn't know. I don't think you knew I was doing it, but I had to just go and, take a walk and let it out and come back and put on. I don't have to be strong for my mother, but the last thing she needs is for me to walk into the room crying. So,
Of course, that would upset her. Yes.
Yeah.
Listen, Auntie Loretta says no, you're not doing it. Okay, you're not doing it.
Right.
But I'm telling you, I'd be like Carissa. I'd be in the hallways. I'd be living in the hallways because
cry a river in the hallway, but don't cry.
I know it. This is your mom. You know what I mean? This is your mother, and it is true. Coming in, that speaks testament. Like that kidney function speaks testament of how much you struggled on with the chemo, and how deconditioned you were. Like you talk about the 25-pound weight loss, and even hydrating was like a task for you, right?
Yeah.
Keeping food down
was
eating.
My taste buds, food didn't taste good, so you don't even want to eat when the food doesn't taste good. So it was a process. It definitely was. And then the whole I think my last chemo treatment was in July, and I didn't get on the study until September. So there was also worry there about, okay, what's going to happen during this time with my tumors? Are they going to get bigger, or what's going to happen? And luckily for me, they weren't growing.
Right.
So, I mean, time was on my side.
Absolutely. So and I'm glad you brought that up, because a lot of times when patients are thinking about something like a clinical trial, they might want to take time to think about it, right? And in your situation, you're absolutely right. Your tumor was very slow growing. It's very slow growing. In 3 months, it didn't really grow at all. I remember the reason why we did repeat scans is because the ones you did earlier in July fell out of window, so we had to do them again. And on those scans, we realized, okay, things are the same. That is not the case for everyone. And I want our viewers to understand that, this is an individualized situation with Pam, but a lot of times we tell patients not to pressure them, but to really, if you're making a decision, to think about it, get your tribe together like Pam has done, or Pam did, and talk about it and make a decision. Because not only does cancer wait, but also when we think about clinical trials, there are limited slots available for these clinical trials. So if the time frame is too long, then we're hoping that your slot is still available for you to get on this trial, then to begin, consent and start screening.
And that was the case for us when we had the call with Dr. Goyal. I want to say it was like the 2nd or 3rd week of March, and that was the scenario. Then was, you can get back on chemo any day, but you can't start the trial any day. So it was like, okay, there's a slot, we need to start it right away. Of course, you can't start the next day, there's protocol, but secure your spot. And then, God forbid, if it's not working, you can always go back on chemo, but you can't always get on the trial. So you do have to make a sound decision quickly.
And getting all the facts, of course, so you know what you're going to be facing. We had a couple of Zoom calls, asking questions, finding out what the side effects were going to be. So we did make a decision based on how I was feeling. But also I wanted to say is that the chemo was working for me. but it just did a toll on my body.
Yes.
It was too much for me. And
Mhm.
at one point, they had to change one of the medications because, it was so tough on me. And then with that new medication, the side effect was anything you touch cold, you had to put gloves on.
Mhm.
When you swallowed something cold, you could feel it going down your throat. So there's a lot of side effects. And even with the clinical trial medications, there's side effects, but there's side effects with any medication
Right.
that you take usually, you know?
So you
And
right, and so you held on chemo not because your cancer wasn't responding. You held
right,
on chemo because of the side effects.
correct.
So you stopped chemo to consider a clinical trial because of side effects. So this is,
Right.
Yes. It was
Because I
bad.
wanted to feel better, even though it was working, I still wanted to have a good quality of life. And I wasn't getting that with the
Mhm.
chemo.
So let's talk about quality of life while we're here. So now you're on a clinical trial 4 months in. Tell us quality of life now versus then.
Um, I wake up every day feeling great. I'm not tired. I'm not exhausted. I'm not having any kind of, the only side effect that I'm having is an issue with my nails, my toenails and my fingernails.
Mhm.
And that was told to me at the beginning before I even started. So I knew that there was a chance that, I would have these issues. But it's not so debilitating where I can't function on a day-to-day basis.
Mhm.
So I am able to go about my day and, deal with the little bit of inconvenience that I have. But I also, like I said, it's reducing my tumors. I don't look at my life as saying I only have a few months. So I am thankful. And I would recommend that anybody, you get your facts, you find out, what it all entails, and you just make the best decision for you. But it does work, and it is working for me.
And I also want to say that we're very fortunate that the clinical trial was in Massachusetts, because to try to be, if it was in New York or some other place, I don't think we would have been able to enter the trial.
Hmm.
But it being in Massachusetts, we jump in the car and we're there in an hour. But if it was in New York or Chicago or someplace else, I don't know how that would work.
Hmm.
That would be a problem.
Well, luckily for me, I didn't have to worry about that.
Right.
But I'm thinking that if I did have to think about distance,
Mm-hmm.
I would find a way to make it work. If I knew it was going to give me more, you know,
Time.
more time, I
Right.
would find a way to make it work. And just to bring up some points on that too, is that, in the beginning, we live about an hour away, but the program has a sponsor that gives you hotel room accommodations.
Mhm.
So we were able to come up the night before to be there for 7 o'clock appointments in the morning. They reimburse you for food and drinks and parking. And they also give you a stipend for every visit that is required. So that is a good thing. That
Yes.
is a big help also.
And I'm
Yes.
glad you mentioned that because those are some of the barriers that are being addressed. In our first series, Dr. Beverly Moy and Dr. Erica Warner talked a little bit about some of the barriers in terms of travel and access, right? That these sponsors are working into their clinical trials in ways to help support patients.
Mhm.
And the fact that you were able to experience that, which helped decrease the burden, right, of
Right.
going back and forth within 24 hours. I mean, Rhode Island is not up the street. And all three of you guys know that. I know that, but
Exactly.
it is helpful. So, when we think about clinical trials, all of the concerns, a majority of the barriers that we think about for our community are, BIPOC community, our Black and Brown communities, folks who might not think about clinical trials as an option or might not even know, right? Or if they do know, and some of the terms that are bringing up is it's a lot, there's a lot of visits and so forth. There are things that are actually happening. Like people are looking at this to say, how do we make sure that these options are available to everyone, not just folks who have means, not just folks who can, not just folks who live close, but wherever you're coming from, wherever you decide to get your care, how do we make it readily available and support patients while they're on there, while they're getting treatment there, wherever there may be for them. You know, we we talked a lot about getting on to the trial and the different things that have happened. You briefly mentioned, the 40 plus percentage of tumor shrinkage that you had. But I want to go back to a point in your journey while you were on a clinical trial. There was an option of increasing your dose, right? And you talked a little bit about the nails, the nail and toenail and fingernail changes that you knew from the beginning. But there was a time where you were offered to increase your dose, and this happens often. And the reason why this was offered to you is because the rest of the patients that they're observing, right, the amount of medication that they were observing in your blood to keep it in the most basic terms was lower than the majority of people that were on a higher dose. And so the thought was, do we go up on your dose to meet that same level as everyone else so that before your first set of scans, we can see a good response? And at the time, you had just started experiencing some symptoms.
Right.
And your answer was?
Well, I had just started experiencing symptoms with my fingernails. My feet, I had probably a couple of months ago, but it wasn't bad. It's more so with the hands, and knowing that you have to use your hands more, it was worse there.
Mm-hmm.
But I wanted to try to get that under control before I thought about increasing the dosage. But then I also realized that, the dosage that I'm on, it's working for me. And I've seen that with two different sets of scans now that, I'm still having shrinkage. It
Right.
was 33% once. The following 2 months, it turned into 40% shrinkage. So I just might be that patient that doesn't need a lot of the medication for it to do the work it's supposed to do.
Right. And
So,
these are the things we learn. And
right,
I remember, I remember it was a conversation ongoing. When you were in clinic, when you left, it was a conversation because you just wanted to do the right thing, right?
right,
And at the time, we had no scans to say, is the dose that you're on, is it okay? And you had to make a decision for yourself, right? You had to advocate for yourself
hmm,
to say, I'm not ready yet. And then I believe your scans were in like maybe two to 4 weeks thereafter for us to see where are we, right?
right,
But that was a moment of advocacy, and a moment that I admire, because you are the patient. Just because you're on a clinical trial, you know it's not everything we say you do. We
right,
work with our patients, and sometimes patients may not understand that, but it is true. Like you have the full authority, whether you're the patient or your tribe, your caregivers, your support system, to advocate on your behalf, and we work together. And so you are at the same dose that you've been on since you started,
started. Yeah.
seeing all of these amazing responses, which is absolutely remarkable. Um,
And I
Loretta,
just wanted to
I
to
just
to
want
piggyback off of that too. Like I praise my mother for just standing firm and
mhm,
saying what she wants to do and what she doesn't want to do. I mean, of course, if it was offered with a higher dosage, you're going to ask questions, weigh out the pros and cons or whatnot. But if she feels comfortable with where she's at, she knows that it's working, it's proven that it's working, and to not take the chance of increasing the side effects. But I do praise her for being her own advocate. And then again, you don't have the pressures. You're not forced to increase the dosage. It's just it's it's an option offered to you, and then you have to just make the decision what's best for you and your health.
And I also feel as though some people they feel as though if you're on a clinical trial that you have to do exactly what they say or they will drop you. That's what I have heard that in the past. Pam, she said, no, I don't want to go up on the dosage, because if she goes up on the dosage, then she was told that their nails will probably get worse than what they are now because of the higher dosage. So some people feel as though they can't say no. If you say, we want you to go up higher, they feel as though they have no choice but to do that. And that's not the case. People need to realize you could say, no, I don't want to, or you could even say, I don't want to do the trial anymore. It's up to the patient to advocate.
I'm so glad you brought that up. The word drop you, like you'll get kicked off of the study.
Right.
No, friends.
Mhm.
Please understand. Again, you are an equal participant in a clinical trial. And you can't even blame our communities,
Right.
folks, just in general, people in general, right? You can't
I-
blame them for feeling like that and thinking like that. And I'm
They
so glad you brought that
believe
up.
they do.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, Loretta, because that is not the case.
I know.
There are guidelines there are guidelines, Loretta, like you say, like, there are guidelines to get you on the study. It takes some time working with your team if you're having symptoms, like, Pam, we've done different creams and so forth. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
there are different things that your team does to
Right.
provide you with the care that you need to keep you on. But if you advocate for yourself and you're not comfortable with something, that doesn't automatically drop you or kick you off the study.
Yeah, you get
I'm
personalized
so
care.
glad. Exactly. I'm so glad you brought that up, Loretta. I know.
I think that's something that patients also need to know.
Yes.
That, I mean, I know there are certain studies where they run for a certain period of time. And then you have this study that I'm in where I can stay on this as long as it's working for me. And then, like you said, I have the option of stopping if I wanted to, which if it's working for me, there's no reason for me to even think about stopping.
Right,
But
exactly.
you can, ask the questions, make the decision for yourself on what you want to do as far as dosage and, staying or getting off of the trial. And then if you wanted to go to a different trial, I think that is also an option too, if I'm not mistaken. If this one wasn't working for me, I would have the choice to start another one to see if I would have better results with that.
Right. And
Right.
based off of the availability,
Mhm.
it's all in conversation with your provider. What we don't speak about, we don't know. And
Mhm.
if that's an interest that you have as a patient, that is definitely something to bring up with your provider. If it's the first clinical trial that you're on and your experience has turned out better than you thought it would be and you're getting a response and you know that going back to chemotherapy might not be what you want to do, you can have that conversation even when it's working, just to plan ahead.
Mhm.
Again, because things are limited and there's slots and there's the screening phase that we talked about. So it's good for us to plan ahead than just to wait and be, reactive to every time something doesn't work, we, figure it out then. But I almost guarantee you your oncologist is probably already thinking ahead, but it's good to hear it from the patient. It's very good to hear it from the patient. And Carissa, I know you were trying to say something. I'm going to give you some time.
Oh,
Yes.
uh,
But I have a
I mean,
question.
I think I was just thinking in my head, there are a lot of misconceptions, and you don't know what you don't know. So, I mean, yes, like to their point, you see flyers and advertisements and commercials and what have you for clinical trials, but you're only going to really know by asking questions to
Right.
see how they're going to work best for you. So,
I've always believed that you have to be your own advocate when it comes to your health. Always ask questions,
When it comes to anything.
always.
But
I have
I
a
also,
black book this big. Every time I go to the doctor, and this is before I got diagnosed with cancer, I knew when all my screenings were, all my questions, all my information. And I always went to doctors that had the time to answer my questions.
Yeah,
If
because
they
she's
didn't,
over the
then
top.
I chose a different doctor because I want to be able to ask questions and get answers. And I have to also say that the team at MGH is the best. I mean, everybody, I love them all, and they do a great job. They're there for the patients, and they do everything they can. Every time I have called, somebody has picked up or called me back, and I couldn't ask for a better team to take care of me, and I appreciate that.
And we do it all over again and again and again and again. Okay? And again and again. And we love you just as much. You guys are amazing. Loretta, go ahead. I'm watching the clock. I'm watching the clock. I know we're talking, but I'm watching the clock.
That more pamphlets, when you go to a doctor's office, they have pamphlets everywhere. You never see pamphlets about clinical trials. They need to get these pamphlets into these doctors' offices with the other pamphlets so that people can read about clinical trials. For some reason, it's not out there. So that's something I think you need to think about, how it could be done that
Or that more doctors need to bring that up.
Yes,
Like,
it's true.
I wouldn't have known if my oncologist hadn't said it to me, and he said outright, if you want to go and get a second opinion, or if you want to go and, talk to this doctor, I will set it up for you. And I am thankful that he did that. But that I agree with Loretta. I mean, you see things hanging on the walls in doctors' offices. You never see anything advertised in clinical trials. And not all doctors, this is the first doctor that I've had that even mentioned anything about a clinical trial.
Right.
So
not all doctors are forthcoming with that information.
Yeah. So I think they need to be, advocating for this also,
Those are very, very strong points. And, even for that visual, like you guys are saying, like it's everywhere, and what strikes me the most is that you guys actually worked in healthcare for how many years? 20?
Over
45,
30.
yeah, 33 for me and 45 for Loretta.
Okay.
Right.
I've double that. Okay. So you guys have been working in healthcare. So it's not like you have no connection to the healthcare system. You were in the healthcare system and now you're a patient and you're seeing things in a very different light, right?
True. Yeah.
But having those pamphlets, having it available, and even letting folks know to bring it up to their providers is the first step, right?
Yeah.
To considering, again, I can talk, and I love talking to you guys, especially. And we're coming up to almost the hour, and our programming is supposed to end in 11 minutes. But I'm lucky because I get to continue it with you guys when I see you or when I call you, Pam. But as we're getting to the end of this, if anyone has any questions, go ahead and put it in the chat. You have the ability to do so from wherever you're streaming from. But I have one question in the chat for Carissa. First, our viewer is awestruck of how strong, beautiful you guys are. And the question is for Carissa. You were appropriately skeptical about clinical trials in the beginning. What helped reduce your concerns?
I mean, I would say one of the first things is actually meeting you guys, meeting the team, and just, receiving answers to, like you said, I came in with my laptop or whatever I had with my questions and getting, the answers to the questions that not like we needed, like I would always say to my mother, like, if I'm over talking you, talking too much, asking too many questions, and just tell me. But I guess I just needed to know a lot of information so that I can understand. So it was never the point of saying, like, don't do the clinical trial. It was just kind of like, okay, who, when, where, how, the typical questions. So, I No, I'm forgetting the true question here. Repeat the question so I can make sure I'm answering it.
Absolutely. I think you were answering it. It's
Okay.
what really helped you reduce your concerns? Like you were
Okay.
skeptical, but
Thanks.
what helped you? And what
Yeah,
I'm hearing is, yep.
I would say just
Level of
getting
care.
the answers, yeah, based on the team and just feeling comfortable and getting answers to all the questions that we had.
Not just keeping it, right? And living with the assumptions of what you think will happen,
Right.
but getting all of that stuff answered. Um,
Mm-hmm.
absolutely. And having a team available to answer those questions for you.
Right.
Correct. Yeah.
But sometimes the team's available, but you don't get the questions out. And so I all night during this conversation here, there's a lot of transparency, common themes, right? Of transparency, communication, care, your tribe, right? The importance of your tribe.
Yes, it's very important to have a support team. It definitely
Definitely
is. I
taking a
know a
risk.
lot of people don't have that, but it is important to have it. I
And
don't
for
go to any appointments by myself. Somebody is always with me.
Mm,
Well, if
and
my
and I think like we're blessed to have each other and
Mhm.
but even if somebody doesn't have that support system, because not everybody has that, whether it's a single person or a person without children or what have you. I mean, I still would inquire and still be open-minded about going on a clinical
Going.
trial. It's not something you can't, I'm not saying it's going to be easy, but you can still achieve it by yourself. So, but obviously it helps if you have somebody there by your side, whether that's to be a person like me and ask 50 questions or whether it's just to sit next to you and be quiet, so,
or make jokes.
or
Um,
that, right.
who does that?
listen, we love the 50 question support person, okay? We love the 50 question support person. We love the Auntie Loretta's. We love the quiet person. We love all of that, okay? Because that's who the patient needs. So whether you have a laptop, a pen and paper, or you're just sitting there, it's support is support.
Right.
And even your willingness to, times where I'm not there and you say, oh, do you want to, call Carissa on the phone? Carissa, do you want to listen? And, it's
We do that too.
nice.
Yeah,
Done that
Yeah.
too. Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
I'm not a millionaire yet, so I can't be there every single, but I try to at least get there for, every other appointment. So it's just nice to know that you guys also just include me, or I can email you or call you myself if I had a question.
Yes.
That is what it should be. Listen, we now one by one, we're getting up to 8 o'clock, and I want you guys to tell the viewers just some closing remarks. If you have any questions, you have about 1 more minute to put in the chat, and then we're going to close this beautiful conversation out. I thank you guys for being candid and your transparency about the different things that have happened and your own thought processes. But if there's one thing, you know what, let me not keep it to one, but I'm going to keep it to 30 seconds each. What what are some things, the most important thing to you that you want to leave with our audience um, in regards to clinical trials, wherever you find yourself, whether you're the patient, PM, or the support, Loretta and Carissa, what are some important points in 30 seconds that you would like to share with the community and our audience?
I would say do not be afraid to enter a clinical trial, that it's a wonderful opportunity to get quality care, individual care, personalized to your illness, and you can advocate for yourself. If you don't feel well or you don't feel like you want to continue, you don't have to, but I think it's a wonderful thing if you reach a roadblock in your treatment to go ahead and try to go to a clinical trial. And I think it's just a wonderful experience.
So I agree with Loretta. And again, I would say, don't let your skepticism overpower your, willingness to try an additional method or try an alternative. Again, if it's not something that's working for you, you can opt out, and hopefully it won't be the only thing available for you, but I wouldn't rule it out just because of uncertainty.
Save the best for last, Pam.
Yes, I think knowing that, the standard of care is not the only care you can get. So you have to ask questions always, and I've always been like that. You always ask questions of your doctors, and hopefully they'll be forthcoming with information, or do your research online, because more than likely there is a clinical trial that you can get into, and you need to do the research on your own too.
Listen, I don't want to go. I mean, I have to.
But
I
you
have
have
to go, but I have to go.
But you have to.
But I have to. But you guys are getting some love in the chat from the Ellie Fund, their director of development there, who is sending salutes to you guys. And Ellie Fund is a organization here in Massachusetts that supports breast cancer patients to help them decrease some of those barriers that they experience with trying to get access to care, whether it's standard of care or clinical trials. So thank you, Donna. And also you have some things here. Thank you for all you do. It has been amazing hearing your experience. So you guys are getting some love. And if you guys are watching, you can keep the love going, because Pam, Carissa, and Loretta will probably watch this rerun again, share it with their family members appropriately. And if you're watching, definitely watch again or share it. Again, all of these 4 videos from beginning to end, part 1, 2, 3, 4, are available and will be available on the MGH Cancer Center YouTube page. Feel free to go back and watch them, share them. We are wrapping up this series. The series is over, right? And we saved the best for last. If you've been following us for the past 4 weeks, you can tell why. But if you have any questions for our Equity Council, feel free to send us an email at mghccdiversity@partners.org, right at the bottom of your screen. Any questions about the live stream, any questions about community engagement, anything at all, feel free to send it over to that email address below. It was a pleasure to moderate these past 4 weeks. I look forward to what's to come. Pam,
Thank
I
you.
honor your bravery. Thank you for advocating for yourself. Carissa, Loretta, thank you for being Pam's tribe, her voice when she couldn't.
Yes.
Thank you for accessing the hallway, Carissa. Listening to your aunt, okay?
It's a long hallway.
A long hallway.
And listening to your long walks and breathe.
Yes, indeed. Loretta, keep being Auntie Loretta.
Yes.
Strong. And wear the heels for Pam. Continue to wear the heels for Pam.
That's right.
Well, she's getting better at that.
I know. I've been inching up a little bit.
Yeah.
Uh-oh.
She's been putting them on.
I love it. Well, to our viewers, thank you so much. We appreciate your attendance. We appreciate your attention. And we wish you a very good night. Thank you, Pam. Thank you, Loretta. Thank you, Carissa.
You're welcome.
And I like to say thank you, Brenda, and the team for all that you guys do. It's very much appreciated. Thank you.
Yes.
Absolutely. Like I said, we do it again and again and again and again. All right, ladies.
Yes, thank you.
Have a great night.
Bye.
Good night, everyone.
Night.
Bye-bye.
Good night. Bye-bye.
Thank you.